Good day, everyone. I'm Emay and Visto, and today I'm going to discuss the chapter 11, which is the organization for purchasing, storekeeping, and transportation. So here are the content. First, important and the objectives and purchasing. Second, the buying merchandise and materials. Third is function of purchasing. Fourth is procedure in purchasing. The fifth is relation and purchasing with other organization. The sixth is stores and control. Then the last is transportation. Generally speaking, the term buying is used in business and management uh, to refer to the act and functional responsibility of procuring commodities. So, and supplies for use. The phrase purchasing refers to the process of making a purchase, which include identifying needs, choosing a supplier, negotiating a fair price, and other important parameters, and then following up the ensure delivery. The term materials management is frequently used when this is broadened to convert traffic, shipping, and product control. So, okay, let's move on to the first topic that I'm going to discuss: the importance of purchasing. So, by looking at this from the perspective of acquiring the different general sort of goods and taking various factors into account for each type, the significance of the purchasing can be further understood. These four categories are goods, materials, tools, and suppliers. So, each has a different purchasing strategy that varies in specialization. The management praise of purchasing calls for careful in that the effective performance. That's it. And let's move on the objectives of purchasing. So the responsibility of the purchasing is sometimes defined as buying materials of the right quality and next and the right quality and the right quality and the right and the from the right source. The fundamentals objectives for purchasing for the manufacturing industry may be summarized as follows. So, here are to maintain continuity of supply to support the manufacturing schedule. To do so with at least amount of material inventory investment consistent with safety and economic advantage. To avoid duplication, waste, or obsolescence with respect to materials. To maintain standard of quality materials based on their suitability for use. To obtain materials of the lower possible cost with maintain the required quality and service, and to maintain quality and to maintain company's competitive position in the industry and conserve its profit position in so far as materials costs as are concerned. So let's move on to the buying merchandise and materials. So the buyers keep the consumers that expect to sell the good to in mind when the makes purchases. The purchaser of materials, on the other hand, must identify reliable sources of renowned course required products at a fair price and with the delivery assurance. The primary requirements of the material used in production is compliance with particular standard. So let's move on to the buying equipment. So, the specification of the job to be done must be established before any price of equipment is acquired. So, and the equipment must be checked to determine its fit for the test. Since equipment is meant to last for a while, careful consideration should be given to the purchase. We may use a basic procedure as an example wherein there aren't many variables to consider and buying supplicated machineries isn't recommended. So let's move on to the buying suppliers. So the accusation of self-reliance often applied to a lesser extent contingent upon factors similar to those that apply to the procurement of materials upon upon specification. Supplies are good that do go into product manufacture but are only utilized by the firm and not sold again. So let's move on to the organization of the purchasing department. So the purchasing department isn't as a rule facilitating staff department. It makes purchasing only on request of other departments and has no authority to make purchasing on its own. The purchasing agent is assisted by a group of men known as buyer who review a requisition, interview salesman, determine price and statement, delivery date, and sign the purchase order. So heeding intent orders and local purchase. So preparing the invitation to bid and delegate purchasing requirements and purchasing orders, canvassers. It could be noted in the chart that there are four canvassing sections, each one assigned to purchase a certain group of materials. The buyer department is facilitating staff function that handles tasks like foreign exchange, import and export, letter of credit, preparation, the creation of other bank notes, and marine insurance can vary coverage a number of variables such as the kind of business and location operation affect the size and structure of the buyer's department. And the next is the function of purchasing. So the purchasing department is expected to perform the following or some of the following tasks. First is to secure necessary raw materials, equipment, facilities, supplies, and other items according to the specification early and arrive at the time fixed by schedule or when they are needed. So the second is to buy at prices according to standard demand within current market prices, but taking advantage of discount may be availed of. The third is to ask for quotation or bids or major items and to purchase items not require bids to canvas for prices when the needs arise. Then to cultivate sources of supplies and to participate in the formalization of special specification of purchase and the conference where purchasing is related. And the sixth is to be on lookout of the new product and desired substitutes. The seven is to overview salesman even if when what they sales is needed and at the time help them see companies executives. And the eight is to study markets and best time to buy. Then the nine to account and inspect purchase. The 10 is to approve invoices per payment. The 11 to keep improve on government regulation and other executives about them. The 12 keep records in supplies, materials, and other purchases. The 13 is to study the company needs and requirements. The 14 is to attend to the routine of purchasing. And the last is to look after the disposal of surplus or obsolete materials, equipment, suppliers, and merchandise. Then procedure in purchasing. So purchasing. Let's move on to the procedure in purchasing. So purchasing is not as simple as it may appear to the average person who has only purchased personal item. A definite, well-planned, and wisely followed procedure is necessary. The purchasing departments illustrated the various purchasing steps taken by the first. They purchase requisition in prepared and signed by the department had needing The materials specification, quality, known source of supply, and the time needed are stipulated and the requisition. The second is the requisition routed through the accounting department for the indication of funds available, after which is signed by the treasurers, that the head of the company, the manager, whatever is authorized in their stead. And the third is the purchase requisition, the forward for purchasing department, the procurement officer assigned. It is canvasser's convinced who is turn makes a canvasser to as the sources availability and the price. When large amount is involved, bidding is sorted to the purchasing department prepares the purchasing order to deciding whether to purchase directly through bidding. So fourth is the purchase order. Signed by the purchasing agent is requisitioner, the treasurer, and the general manager. Copies and prepared for the suppliers to department or until the needs of the suppliers and receiving unit, accounting unit, and the inspection unit. The fifth is to purchase order then forwarded to the suppliers to the winning bidder in the case of the bidding, in case of the order is not met in the time and there is material shortage situation, follow up may be made either personal, by telephone, or by other means. So six, upon delivery of the purchasing goods, they are checked by the requisitioner and the representative of the inspectors of the audition find out when the requirements as the specification are applied with. It is so delivery invoice in signing by the constitutional and the auditor's representative and the goods are finally accepted. Arrangement for the payment are made and record of the transaction are kept for the future reference. So let's move on to relation of purchasing with the other organization units. The buyers are operating virtually touches practically every other department of the whole organization. Many vital fields beyond the actual procurement of materials and supplies for their needs. Thus, corporation must be maintained not only with production but only with finance, accounting, engineering, maintenance, sales, office management, and general management as well. Let's move on to the purchasing and production. So the whole okay. The rule of the purchasing department in an organization is to ensure that all necessary materials and supplies are purchasing in the systematic manners with practice practicable leeway for a well planned program. A procurement and minimum of rush requirement, the purchasing department must ensure that the actual delivery requirements are met and that the production department is advised as to when orders are issued and delivery promised by the suppliers. So the next, let's move on to purchasing and engineering. So, the cooperation between the departments of purchasing and engineering is similar to the between the department of purchasing and production in many ways. When the exception of in that engineering is primarily focused on issues related to product design and specification prior to actual production requirements. So let's move on to the traditionally. The role of engineering and a buying agent are highly distinct and they tackle problems with materials in very different ways. The buyers, on the other hand, refers to keep these margins to maximum. The latter frequently specifies broad margin of the performance, safety, and quality in recent years. A growing a number of men with engineering background and expertise have joined the buyers team, helping to close the gap causing the opposing points of view. Right, let's move on to purchasing and accounting. So the relations between the purchasing and accounting department is considered a vital one, which frequently start before the purchasing is actually made. So every purchase made represent an expenditures against the company budget and set in motion a series of accounting operation. Accounting display actual records or of current and total conception and what goes into operation in order to calculate the finished product and manufacturing until cost. So let's move on to purchasing and sales. So, as a preference to the likely quality needed for suppliers, the sales department should keep the buying. So, department may inform of the sales target and expectation. Additionally, information should be sent to the purchasing department today. Required preparation for the purchasing program may be made well in advance of the need real. So let's move on to the next topic, which is the store and the control. So here are the function. So the function of the storekeeping is concerned with providing a place of places for the safe and convenient storage of materials and supplies that are needed to immediate use. So one man is usually assigned to take charge in responsibility for all aspects of storekeeping, including disbursing materials as required. So here are the next is the purpose. So the purpose of storekeeping and control may be stated in two categories to it. First, from the viewpoint of operation, to assure as adequate supplies of materials when needed in balance with the requirements and turning over the reasonable rate. And then the second is to assure that they are readily accessible and safe from fire, floods, theft, and other hazard. And the second is from the financial viewpoint. So to maximize and minimize inventory investment at any given time, those in reducing the cost of handling and restoring insurance and interest. And the second is to avoid losses from deterioration, obsolescence, and filling prices. Then, just move on to the location of storage room. The location storage room is important consideration. It is logically obvious that the storage room should be convenient there to department being served so that no unnecessary time may be lost getting the item needed. Unnecessary handling of materials adds to the cost of not to the value. So let's move on to the stock keeping. So any system of stock keeping store control predicated. So, on the order of storage materials and their counting their well in storage, attention must be paid. First is the facilities, second is supervision, and the third is the record. So, storage facilities. So, let's move on to storage facilities. Storage facilities must be adapted to the types of materials handled and include racks, bins, shelving, raised platform, and floor space. The arrangement may be adhered to the commodity classification order as closely as possible, such as arrangement will facilitate both the physical handling of the stock with putting them in the store and finding them in the data. And then let's move on to the supervision. Supervision. Control of stock is usually done by the use of stock cards with providing running inventory of each item and watch on hand and the balance on hand. Control stores and further facilitated by unit storage or filling so as to give up quick visual count of materials on hand several thousand at a glance. So let's move on to the records. So the basic work on stores department is the stock records and the perpetual inventory. The records, of course, must be periodically verified, say monthly, semi annually, or annually. So stock records are useful because they reduce physical inventories to reasonable and economic but a sufficient level. So they are needed in the preparation periodic financial statements such as profit and loss or income statements. So they reveal slow moving and the order of preferred priorities in getting stock. They form a basis for adjustment in the event of fatigue or calamity. So they maximize commission of acts, dishonest and carelessness. Then they enable the enterprise to keep delivery dates and promise customers. So let's move on to the last topic, which is the transportation. So, importance of transportation. Control of stock is usually done by the use of stock cards, which provide running inventory of each item and a balance in control. So, for the stabilization by unit or a storage of feelings so as to give quicker gradual units materials several thousand of glaze. So modes of transportation. So a business firmly defined on the outside sources transportation or operate its own internal facility. Outside transportation may be truck and bus. By rail, by water, by air, trucks and buses are extensively used by the business firm of the Philippines. Passenger traffic is also quite heavy. So the railroads is an expensive method that transporting raw materials and heavy equipment over relatively long distance in the Philippines. There are two railway systems, one on Panay Island and other one in France from La Union in northern Luzon to Albay in the Bicol Peninsula. So, the water transportation. And even more expensive because the Philippines is an island nation. It depends heavily on inter-island shipping. So, in the archipelago of many islands, both rail and water transportation for trade and industry transportation necessitate terminal handling to and from the railway station for port of the firm premises. So, air travel or transportation. Quick and efficient, but it is also expensive. Businesses are fast realizing the advantages of air cargo for certain types of merchandise. For instance, fishing migrates regulates imply planes, road, or are fresh from Mindanao to Manila. Newspaper from the delivered by the air transport. So, internal transportation. So, fleet are maintained by the manufacturing or marketing organization. Usually the supervision and control of the transportation unit are handled by unit production or sales depending on which function is being served. That's all for the topic chapter 11, which is the organization for purchasing, storekeeping and transportation. And according to Menmet Murat Adan, be like a train, go in the rain, go in the sun, go in the storm, go in the dark tunnel, be like a train, concentrate on the road and go with no hesitation. And that's all for today. See you in my next discussion. Thank you. Bye.